All right, we're going to pause her testimony and bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us now is Michael Jaafar, trial attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, so nice to see you on this Friday. Thank you for being with us today. All right, listening to Martha Barton on the stand there. She's quite the character. What do you think of her testimony so far?
She's so damn charming that even though she violated the rule of sequestration, she still was, everybody gave her a pass. She's very charming, obviously believable. I was stunned that she made notes of every time she talked to Melody and the time and the date. So, I mean, she's very charming. Her testimony is important because they're going to go towards the .38 caliber. It's very important. Yeah, I want to see how this testimony ends, and I really want to see how the cross-examination is, and here's why that's important. So far in this case, and this case has been going on for a long time. There's been 15 days of testimony. That's a long trial, right? The defense attorneys for Melody Farris, I know they're not up yet, but the defense attorneys for Melody Farris have taken a turn in this case where they viciously and aggressively cross-examine sympathetic witnesses. I'm really interested to see how they cross-examine her. Her testimony's not done yet. Obviously, she might be on there for another half hour. But I'm really interested in seeing how they attack this. I hope they don't come at it the way they came at Scott's ex-wife or Chris's ex-wife, where they just made her cry on the stand. But so far, her testimony has the potential to be impactful negatively against Melody Farris. But other than that, I think her testimony is going as to be expected. So I'm curious to see how it ends.
Yeah, me too, and then the cross. All right, Michael, thank you so much. We are going to get in a quick break. Still with us, trial attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, all right, let's talk about this. We're going to hear closing arguments from the state. Second-degree murder. It can be pretty straightforward for them because they're most likely, well, they will play that cell phone video of George inside that suitcase. They're going to be able to say that Sarah helped zip it up. So this is depraved heart. What do you think?
I love the last two words you said, depraved heart. That's exactly what they're going to think. That's what I was going to say. I believe that. Listen, Sarah Boone, say whatever you want about her. She is on brand, dude. She is always on brand. Honestly, I respect her. I think she's a little bit, crazy for what she did, for how this whole thing happened, both what happened and how it happened, and after her behavior after it happened. One of the experts in here said that she suffers from a little bit of narcissistic personality, not rising to the level of a disorder. That's what I thought. I'm not a doctor. That's what I thought when I looked at the interviews both on the sidewalk with the police when they arrested her and the interview with the pink shirt detective. So I believe she's going to get convicted. I don't believe that this is a murder too. I believe that this is an involuntary manslaughter. I believe it screams involuntary manslaughter all day long. I always said there's actually not only a factual question here, but a legal question. The legal question is, do you, and I expect, Owens to focus on this, one of the focus points of his closing argument, do you have a duty as a private citizen to unzip a suitcase when the person in the suitcase voluntarily went in, but you assisted them in zipping it up? Do you have a duty, right? It's like a Rorschach test. People are going to look at it and come to different conclusions. But do you have a duty or not? If you don't have a duty, I know you don't have a duty to jump into a river and save a drowning person. That's an easy one. I know you have a duty to put down a gun that you've picked up and you're going to shoot somebody. But this is in the middle. Do you have that duty? Owens is going to make a very impassioned closing argument. I'm really riveted by the closing arguments. I think she made a mistake by not allowing lesser included charges. I believe that was a mistake. She's already served 4 years in jail. But that comes down to the little bit of narcissistic personality. But she has swayed me a little bit in this case, Kelly. I will be honest. She did sway me. I didn't think she'd sway me, but she did sway me with her testimony. I do believe that she's a battered person. I did not know she was stabbed in the leg. I did not know. When she showed the picture of her leg being stabbed, I felt bad for her because, I have a daughter. Like, I don't want my daughter to be treated that way by anybody. I also did not know how small Jorge Torres is, right? He's 103 pounds. I have a 9-year-old son who's very thin. He weighs 115 pounds. He's 9 years old. This guy weighed 12 pounds less than my 9-year-old, right? So this whole case had things in it I did not know, and I've been looking at this for 3 years, 4 years. I did not know any of the stuff that came out in that trial. So the closing arguments are going to be very impactful, very important. I'm riveted. I want to see what comes out. I want to see how Owens brings all the evidence together. We know in his opening statement he said, my client lied, and I want to see how he brings it into the closing argument. It's going to be very, very fascinating to see.
It really is, Michael. And when you talk about that duty, I've been thinking a lot about this duty. Does someone have that duty? And I've wondered, okay, so she did help zip up the suitcase, and then she's hearing him say, I can't breathe. Does it then become her duty? And I've contemplated it, wondering, well, he's a grown adult. He got in that suitcase on his own. He was intoxicated, clearly, probably fell asleep and died. Had he not been so intoxicated, he probably could have maybe broken out of that suitcase. Who knows? She was intoxicated too. But I wonder, does it become your duty because she did help zip him up, and she's there and he's saying to her, I can't breathe, Sarah?
Yeah, you know what? I was so fascinated by this. I went to LexisNexis and I used my account and I did actual legal research on this. The legal research that I did shows that it sways into the direction of her having a duty because they live together. It's like a family member choking and you don't call the police. You do have some culpability. You do have a depraved mind. You're seeing somebody choking. It's essentially what she was seeing, even worse. She actually assisted him in the choking. So it's like giving him something you know he may choke on. He starts choking on it. He tells you call the police and you don't do it. That is some culpable behavior. That is some depravity, right? A well-adjusted person in a well-adjusted relationship wouldn't have even called the police. They would have unzipped the suitcase. But if you then convince a jury, well, I didn't unzip the suitcase because he would have killed me, at least you should have called 911, zipped it and ran something. But then again, it really comes down to what's in the person's mind, right? We weren't there. It also comes down to the fact he weighed less than her. I thought he was a big dude who could murder her with his hands. He weighed less than my 9-year-old son, right? So all of these things are going to come into play. But yes, Kelly, from the legal research I did, I believe, and the legal research suggests that she did, in fact, have that duty. She was not a stranger to this person. He was not drowning in a river, which we all agree it's not your duty to jump into a river and drown with a person. But, yeah, I do believe she had a duty. But, again, it's so close that this case has everything.
It really does, Michael. We're getting word that a lot of the people are making their way inside the courtroom. Jorge Torres' family is in there, but we can't take you in just yet because the judge, from our understanding, is not on the bench. Michael, before we went to a lunch break, there was another interesting legal argument. The assistant state's attorney wanted to have an instruction saying that she did have to retreat. She had him inside that suitcase, but she should have had to retreat, which is an interesting argument because we are here in Florida. It's a stand your ground state. And what Mr. J was arguing is that because she had committed an aggravated assault, she then really shouldn't be able to fall into that stand your ground kind of line of case law. But he couldn't charge her, from my understanding, with aggravated assault because of the statute of limitations. So Owens is going to be able to argue. I've heard a lot of people, when I've talked with people about this case, say he was inside that suitcase. She could have just left. She could have called 911, walked out of that apartment. But the jury is going to hear that she did not have a duty to retreat.
100% agree with you. Again, there are going to be members in the jury, though, who are going to say she could have called 911. Just look at it like this, right? Let's just say, and this is what, if I was a fly on the wall in the jury room, one of them is going to say, let's just say, take it as an assumption of fact. We have a crystal ball. We look into the future. She unzips a suitcase. He kills her. Let's just say we know for a fact that's going to happen. Why just fall asleep? Why not just call the police and leave and say he's choking, come get him? By the way, had she done that, she would not have been charged. She would not have been charged, right? Because at the end of the day, what you have is he went into the suitcase voluntarily. He asked her to zip him. She zipped him. He asked to get out. She was worried for her life. She called the police. The police came in. If he died and asphyxiated by that point, I think, in my opinion, she wouldn't have been charged, right? But one more thing, and I tried to see if this happened. I couldn't find it on the internet. I wanted to see if in the voir dire process, Owens asked any of the jurors whether or not they're claustrophobic. I don't know if he did it. He might have, he might not have. If he didn't, I think it would be a mistake, and I'll tell you why. As a person who has severe claustrophobia, if I was on that jury, I would be getting everybody else in the jury riled up to how much of a torture it is to be in a suitcase zipped up and you can't get out, and the person that you're asking of God doesn't get you out. I'm getting choked up thinking about it because of this is the worst form of death for somebody who has any type of claustrophobia. So if any members in that jury have that, their mind is tainted. They will not be open to any. That's why you might see a hung jury, right? Because if there's someone on the jury who believes that she was right in her, justified in her behavior, and that this does not rise to the level of murder too, and another member of the jury who believes this is absolute torture, it's sadistic torture, you might get a hung jury. You might. And if you do, I think if I was a fly on the wall in that jury and I listened to what they were doing, I would see basically a match between the the claustrophobic person and the person who believed Sarah Boone. I believe she's guilty only because I'm given the choices between murder two or didn't do anything culpable at all. But if I had the choice between murder two, full acquittal, or involuntary manslaughter, it's involuntary manslaughter all day.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michael. Okay, we're going to get in a quick break. Closings haven't started yet. All right, those were some key moments from this morning. The state resting eventually its rebuttal case. And now we are just waiting for those closing arguments to begin. Still with us, National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, I was taking a quick quick look through the notes of voir dire to see if I saw any questions about someone being claustrophobic, and I did not see anything. So basically, defense counsel was asking, has anyone been in an abusive relationship? Do you feel that you have a right to defend yourself? And so we saw a lot of those questions, which of course are important in voir dire.
That's a major mistake. I'm glad you told me that because I was trying to see if I could find it. Kelly, I'll tell you, I think my colleague Owens, our colleague, acquitted himself very well. I think he built a nice national following. I'm sure his phone is ringing off the hook. I will say one thing then. Now that you've told me that, that's a major mistake. And I don't know him, if I were to bump into him before this trial started, I would have told him, make sure you ask every single juror, are you claustrophobic? Because anyone who says they're claustrophobic should not be on that jury. I'm telling you right now, Kelly, I do not deserve to be on that jury or any jury where claustrophobia is a thing. Because if you're claustrophobic, you've closed your mind before this trial begins. The minute you see that a person's in a suitcase, you want to get out of that courtroom. It's hard for me to even see that video, right? So that's a major mistake. I can't believe you told me that he did not voir dire anybody asking them, are they claustrophobic? Because what matters at that point? If you're claustrophobic and there's nothing a person could do to you if you're claustrophobic to justify being in a suitcase and asking you to get out, just so you understand the gravity of it. People who are claustrophobic cannot sit for an MRI. So if somebody on that jury is claustrophobic, they've been asked to do an MRI, and they've said, I would rather die. I'm not going to sit for this MRI, which is safe. Being in a suitcase and adjudicating and passing guilt or innocence on a fact pattern where somebody's in a suitcase, wow, that's a major mistake. But Owens, he did a fantastic job in this case. Look at the things he did. Just look at the fireworks in the courtroom earlier this week on the issue of the expert who had a deposition and did not disclose certain things to her, changed her opinion later on. I mean, look at the fireworks there. I think that lasted for 2 hours of him arguing with the judge and the judge relenting to some of his requests, right? So he did a fantastic job in this case. But that thing, the voir dire, not asking about claustrophobia, wow, that's amazing. Sometimes the most obvious thing, sometimes we as attorneys just miss.
Hey, Michael, speaking of that expert, I mean, Owens did get her to say that Sarah Boone does suffer from battered spouse syndrome. Yeah. But then she's saying in that moment, though, when she had him inside that suitcase and they were playing puzzles and laughing, she was not suffering from that at that moment, which I think was an interesting way to say it on the stand. And I've noticed some people, even on the jury, they were a little bit perplexed at how she was trying to explain that.
And, well, her credibility was impinged before she even got to that point. Because you think about it, he asked her question after question after question. Did you watch the video? No. Did you know of this? No. Did you look at the video? No. Did you look at her interview? No. So at the end of the day, her testimony, he also painted her out to be kind of a narcissist with the insult at the beginning of her testimony. Didn't you say that these other people know nothing because they're not doctors? You're a doctor. So I thought that. So he kind of like painted her red. So I think her credibility is not going to be. The jury's going to maybe weigh her lightly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Michael. Thank you so much.